Taylor Mchargue, college football analyst, joins us. Craig Smoke and Paul Catalina, David Smoke. This is 365 Sports. Taylor, thank you. Great to have you on. And I know you've got yourself a busy football season coming up. We'll go over a couple of the quarterback takes as far as people being named QB1, get your opinion, but a few other college football notes too. I don't think there's any surprise about Dequan Finn getting QB1 at Baylor. Your thoughts about what he can do for them?
Well, first of all, it's great to be back with you guys. We made it through the offseason, right?
Yes,
Week 0
did.
finally here. Great to be back. I got a chance to I had not seen Dequan Finn in person until the Manning camp this summer. And these guys are running around in shorts and T-shirts and throwing the football. But it did sort of jump out, his athleticism, just moving around, how he goes through, because they go through routes on air and they're moving around a couple different times when they throw. And everything that you see on tape, he backs up in person, and he's a big dude. He's not real tall, but is clearly a guy that's been in the weight room and has developed. And I know this isn't a huge surprise that he's been named the starter, but if I'm a Baylor fan, this is a huge step forward at the quarterback position, and this is somebody that can be a difference maker. I think Dave Aranda and his staff, this was a home run to get him out of the portal, and I'm a firm believer this is going to be somebody that late in games, both with throwing the football, but obviously with his legs as well. I think this is somebody that's a difference maker for Baylor this year.
How good do you think he can be in light of the fact that their offensive line is by far their largest unanswered question?
Well, I think the quality of athlete that he is, the beauty in college football is if you've got the best athlete on the field at the quarterback position, you're pretty much always in the game, by and large. I mean, within reason, but with the level of talent that Baylor should have this season, there are very few teams, maybe not a single team, that he's not going to be one of the best one or two athletes on the field every single week. And I think when you have that at the quarterback position, it also helps that it's in the Big 12. I think this would be different if you had I don't think Dequan Finn would be a great fit for most of the SEC. But in the Big 12, with the style of play, typically smaller linebackers, a lot of odd fronts where you just have three down linemen, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for him to extend plays, make plays outside of the pocket, design quarterback run game as well, all the things that he did at Toledo. And again, I'll keep saying it, if I'm a Baylor fan, this is somebody that I'm very excited about as having your quarterback.
Been a few other starting quarterback announcements. I know we probably can't talk about them all, Taylor, but Miller Moss out at USC, Malik Murphy at Duke. I don't think that those are necessarily big surprises. If you want to touch on either one of those, or has there maybe perhaps been another one? Brendan Sorsby at Cincinnati. Has there been anything that you've noticed that stuck out as far as the QB1 announcements?
Well, I think some of what you already touched on, I think those are obviously some of the main ones. Will Howard at USC. I think the Boise State announcement this week, I know that's a group of 5 team, but that's a team that I think is odds-on favorite to get to the college football playoff this year. For anybody that hasn't followed this, Malachi Nelson, former top quarterback in the country, 5-star, transfers from USC. He gets beat out by Maddox Madsen, who was there a year before, and that was one of the biggest surprises to me because, look, in this era of transfer portal and NIL, usually, if you've got a guy that transfers in, that means that they had some sort of NIL commitment and they're getting paid to be there. Usually, that means that guy's probably winning the job. I think that's not a huge surprise. This was an example, and I'm not sure what Malachi Nelson's deal is with Boise in terms of NIL, but this surprised a lot of people that Maddox Madsen, who's the incumbent, that he retained that job.
What are your thoughts about SMU? Preston Stone was the favorite to be and remain the starter, but Kevin Jennings is a very talented young man who got a chance to play at the end of last year, had a great bowl game. The quarterback room that they have as they enter the ACC.
Yeah, I thought it was wise how Rhett Lashley and his staff handled that, right? Because you go back the last 2 seasons, we had Preston Stone in his first start 2 years ago at Tulsa, and he breaks his collarbone on the second possession of the game. Then last year gets hurt again. Jennings has to lead them through the end of the season and the American Conference Championship. And I think the way Rhett Lashley and his staff handled this, where they said, look, we're going to have this as a competition and we're going to delay naming a starter, whether this was the full intent or not, we're going to delay naming a starter until well into camp so that we don't give Kevin Jennings an opportunity to transfer. Because with the injuries that Preston Stone has had, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, it's similar to Quinn Ewers, right? You have to expect that your backup will play at least some this season based on his injury history the last 2 seasons. So I think Preston Stone is the more talented quarterback. He's got more experience. But Kevin Jennings is also a guy that he's going to be a solid ACC quarterback, and I don't think it's a significant step down from Preston Stone, but not surprised to see Preston Stone get the nod as a starter.
Taylor, when you look at the group of 5 schools, Boise State, Memphis, Tulane, I'm leaving somebody out, Jacksonville State, who is your favorite right now to be a playoff team?
Yeah, I think it's Boise State. I think the combination of talent that they have coming back this year and the way that their schedule lays out, they've got Oregon early in the season that they'll almost certainly lose to. But outside of that, I think that if you go look at the odds for Vegas on them winning the Mountain West, they are heavy favorites in that conference. And I think they have a similar situation to Memphis where you've got a ton of returning production. Both Memphis plays at Florida State and Boise State plays at Oregon. Both of those games are going to be very important because let's assume Memphis wins the American Conference and let's assume that Boise State wins the Mountain West. The committee is going to look at, and it's going to come down to how did they perform against these top teams in September? Because if one gets blown out and the other one hangs, it stays within a score or two, that will matter at the end of the year. But coming into the season right now, I think it's Boise State. Just again, go down the list and look at the amount of production. I believe it's 10 of 11 are back on defense for a team that won that conference last year. So I think Boise State's the favorite for that 12th spot in the expanded playoff.
Taylor, a lot of very interesting quarterbacks in the Big 12 this year, whether it be veterans like Shedeur or younger guys like Avery Johnson. Who are a couple of the guys that you like the most? I know Garrett Green's a guy that gets a lot of love. You got Alan Bowman coming back. You mentioned Dequan Finn, but who do you think if you had to pick a couple of guys in the Big 12, Cam Rising would stand above the rest for you?
Cam Rising will get all the headlines for a number of reasons. I think he may be in terms of draft position, that may be your best quarterback out of the Big 12 this year. But I'll go with a selfish answer because I have these 2 teams in Week 1, Kansas on Thursday night and then Oklahoma State on Saturday. Jalen Daniels, can he stay healthy for Kansas? I think Kansas is my dark horse playoff team because if you look at where their schedule lines up, they're already a ranked team. So it's not inconceivable to think that could be one of the top 1 or 2 teams in the Big 12 this year. And then Bowman at Oklahoma State is interesting because he's a guy that I think people give the benefit of the doubt because he's played for so long. He's in his 7th year of college football. But going back and watching some tape on him from last year, you've got some really high highs and you've got some really low lows. And I'm curious for Oklahoma State, can they find some consistency from a guy that has, again, he's been around a long time. If he could just be consistent, lean on Ollie Gordon, there's a reason Oklahoma State's ranked where they are and have the 2nd best odds out of the Big 12. But both of those teams, Kansas and Oklahoma State, quarterbacks are going to be incredibly important for those teams in their playoff hopes.
Taylor, when you're playing the quarterback position, consistency is something obviously every team coach needs. But how hard is it that if you start poorly, that you have an opportunity, that you have the ability, resiliency, and talent to at least get out of it, where some quarterbacks, if they start poorly, they can't get out of it, and that's why they don't play very often?
Well, I think it's incredibly difficult in this day and age, especially because the days of allowing a guy to have multiple games and even a full season to work through growing pains, we're really behind that. And we've moved to a model that you typically have 2 quarterbacks on your roster that they obviously go into camp and they duke it out, and that's your quarterback competition. But so often we see guys, even if they lose the battle in camp, or certainly if they lose it in spring ball, they leave, they transfer out.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of looking over their shoulder in this day and age because it is a win now mentality. These ADs and these coaching staffs, they're moving on from head coaches after really short stints, sometimes 2 years, sometimes 1 year in certain instances. So it's part of the position, and that never goes away. I struggled my senior year, had some really bad turnovers in a out-of-conference game against Kansas, and was worried that was, I was going to be benched. It ended up being able to come back and have a good senior season, but it goes with the territory of trying to have a short memory, which every quarterback at any level has to try and develop that.
Taylor, I'm going to make a pitch to you. I've made to a couple different people and see if you think I'm crazy or not. UCF is going to be in the Big 12 title game.
I think you're crazy.
Okay.
No, that's not. I got to go back and look at it. I forget where they stand in the coaches poll and where Vegas has them, but I want to say they were in the top third. My issue with UCF and my memory from last year and what they've done in the portal, I don't know that they have what it's going to take in the trenches in the interior to compete with the top couple, 2 or 3 teams in the league. I think they're still they're going to fall short of even your Arizonas, but certainly your Oklahoma State and your Utahs. I think interior offensive and defensive line, I'm not sure that they have the depth for what it's going to take. I think that's going to be one of your top third or certainly top quarter of the Big 12 this year. But are they going to get to the conference championship game? I think they're probably at least a year away from that.
We've got schools like Oregon and Washington now in the Big 10, schools like Utah and Arizona now in the Big 12, schools like SMU and Stanford now in the ACC, and we've got an expanded 12-team playoff. Just what's your excitement level entering this new terrain of college football where so much is different and yet interesting and I guess for most people exciting?
Yeah, there's a lot of changes this season. I have a ton of optimism for this college football season. There's some other things that go, beyond the expanded playoff and the conferences, but I'm really excited to watch how the new quarterback comms, the NFL style now, where the coaches are talking directly into the quarterback's ears now in their helmet, and same for usually a middle linebacker on the other side. I think that's a tweak to the game that is better for the sport. I'm excited for some of these matchups that we haven't had before. I just saw the announcement. Ohio State going to Oregon for what we're calling a conference game. I get that that's insane that that's a Big 10 game, but as a fan of the sport, that's going to be great. And like we talked about this a lot last year with you guys, and I'll keep saying it. I am convinced that the expanded playoff is going to bring more meaningful football in the month of November. I don't think it waters down the regular season. I think these games in the month of November and rivalry week, the Ohio States versus Michigans, the Auburn versus Alabamas, those are still going to have a lot of impact on conference standings and who gets buys. But you're going to have more teams in the month of November that have legitimate chances at getting to the college football playoff. And I think that's a good thing for the sport. More postseason football that's meaningful is a good thing.
Taylor, what would an in-helmet device have meant to you when you were playing the game?
I think the biggest impact is for young quarterbacks because they cut it off at 15 seconds. So when I started as a freshman. When I was a freshman, it would have been really beneficial if I got to the line at 30 seconds left on the play clock and we were going hurry up and we're going through cadence and my offensive coordinator says, "Hey, dummy, you need to flip the protection because you're about to get hit in the back of the head." Because when I was a freshman, I didn't get that right very often. I think things like that are going to happen all the time, and you're also going to get on the defensive side the same thing. You're going to get checks at the last second. It's going to be a chess match. Really fascinating to watch how this goes, but especially for young quarterbacks, there's such a benefit to being able to coach them up until 15 seconds on where do your eyes go in this progression? Do they need to flip protection? Do you need to flip run game to the other side? All of those things are in play. And we talked with Trent Dilfer at American Conference Media Days, head coach at UAB, and he talked about this. And he said, look, I think it's a net positive and another benefit to the offensive side of the ball. But there are some major benefits for the defense as well in terms of being able to make checks as long as teams aren't going super fast with their tempo. But the last thing on it, even if you are going real fast with your tempo, then you're sort of negating the benefit of the in-ear communication. So I think it benefits young quarterbacks the most. I'll
be in touch about trying to set up something weekly to fit your schedule, the broadcast that you have. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it. You're right. College football, the offseason's over. The games are here. Have a great rest of the week.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Taylor Mchargue with us, CBS, ESPN, college broadcaster, former Rice starting quarterback.